Peter, I hope all is well. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
I'm just impressed that you guys came back on Throwback Thursday with a "When They Reminisce Over You" music bed. That was solid, man. That's the way to start it off on a Thursday.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Listen, Marquise Munson, he can go from Alan Jackson to Chance the Rapper. I mean, it's and everything in between. So it's the variety that
way down on the Chattahoochee to coloring book. That's an impressive scale. So that's a feather in your cap, man. I need to get my producers rolling their game that high.
Yeah. Hey, listen. I've learned the music scene, and I make sure that I stay youthful by hanging out with these guys like this. But Peter, let me ask you now. Now, I think everybody knows that your wife is a big Alabama fan. Has she been able to get over the championship? Because we need somebody to allow us to cry on their shoulder. Is she still crying over the championship game?
What's so funny is that I had built out, for Christmas, I bought myself a couple of televisions, and I built out this big media room where I normally do my shows from. And I said, all right, for national championship game, we're going to christen this new media room, right? We're going to watch it. Watching the first half, and at halftime, she looks at me and she goes, "We're never watching a game in this room ever again." And she goes downstairs because she's like, it's cursed as bad as Alabama played in that first half. And obviously, as you know, it didn't look a whole lot better in the second half. So, yeah, I mean, I think she's like every single Alabama fan, where it was just so different than any other loss that they had. You know, you lose last second to Deshaun Watson, you understand it. You lose to, Chad Kelly back in the day and Ole Miss and the way that they did it, you can understand it. Even kick six is kind of crazy, but they had never seen a 44-16 whooping like that. I don't think that's going to be one of those scars that people are going to remember for a while as a Tide fan.
On the national side of things, as you cover the SEC, how much have you guys spent on maybe a brilliant plan from Dabo, but not the best coaching job from Nick Saban and company here in T-Town?
I think, listen, that's the first thing, right? The drive-by national media that doesn't know how good Alabama's football program is going to come in and go, well, this is the end of a dynasty, and say idiotic things like that, which we all kind of, those in the know are like, really? Is it really the end of the dynasty? Like, you got 4 of the 5 top, wide receivers coming back on an explosive offense and the number one recruiting class. You'll be fine. But I think the bigger question, and I think you saw that, is that traditionally Alabama does such a great job recruiting guys that they can out-athlete everybody. They can out-athlete 99% of the team. But Clemson has now reached that echelon, and Georgia's there as well, too, that they are the 1% of college football programs that Bama can't just show up and they're better than, right? That they have to have that scheme. At the end of the day, I thought the Saban quote going into halftime was very telling, that he says, this is what teams have been doing against us all year long, and we aren't prepared. When he said that, it was almost like a shot to the coaching staff going, this isn't foreign stuff that we're seeing. We've seen this stuff, yet our guys aren't ready, and that led me to believe there was going to be some change, and of course there is.
When you talk about it, and we heard you on ESPN College Football Live a couple of days ago, and I know it was Mike Golick, and I believe maybe I'm trying to think of the other guy, Dusty, the last name.
Dusty Dvorak.
Yes,
right, yep.
Yes. And you guys were talking about college changes. And certainly there's a lot here in Tuscaloosa. We're expecting more changes in the next couple of weeks. So you've got 5 that's already in the books. It may go up to 7. At some point, that does catch up with coaches. Will it catch up to Nick Saban?
Well, I think it doesn't catch up with them necessarily in the regular season. But, what Nick has built and Alabama has built, from Greg Burns to the president to everybody in the athletic department, is that it's a pass or fail grade at Alabama now, right? Like, it's not, hey, we had a good season. You either win the championship or you don't. And I think for them, you look at their schedule, they should be the favorite to win the SEC yet once again. The question is will Sark being a part of this offense, and Kurt Flood and all those other guys that they're bringing in, can you meld? And more importantly, can you stay for 1 or 2 more years? I think that's the thing is you look at Brent Venables and Tony Elliott and those guys, I think they have a lot of fun going to work every day at Clemson. I think Alabama, the fun necessarily isn't in the grind or the process. The fun is in actually winning and looking back at it. And so, listen, man, Alabama football, somebody asked me about this when I was in Orlando this week. Alabama football, when you go to work there one way or another, whether on the field or coaching or behind the scenes, it's like going to law school or medical school. it's probably not going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun, but you're going to be a whole lot smarter and probably a whole lot richer after the experience.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. It is the fast track to the NFL. It's also fast track to getting the head coaching. When you look at Alabama offensively, we have been studying some of the numbers, offensive efficiency, and the way that we've shifted our attention there may have also hurt Alabama on the defensive side of the football, that they scored so quickly that it stressed out a defense that had a lot of injuries going into the season, that they never could find the depth to maybe count on that typical Nick Saban-style defense that we've come to expect in his 12-year tenure.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some weird way, even as explosive as Alabama's offense was, it almost was like to a fault. So I think that's fair, right? And I mean, you might say, well, how are you ever going to fault the team for scoring? It just never felt like that was the team or the type of style that Nick likes to play. And I think, you go back to a couple of years ago when Nick said, hey, he didn't really like, the speed of the game. And I think a lot of it is because it leveled the playing field. Listen, I mean, if you're going to play 75 offensive snaps or 70 offensive snaps, and Nick can, not transfer in, but he can make adjustments. He can send in a package of time to do that. I don't think anyone's going to be out X than O him. But what's happening is team goes to a little tempo. They have more offensive plays. Naturally, the team gets a little bit more tired, and that's where there's a disadvantage. So, I mean, I think if Sark and those guys come in with this offense, I think you do see a little bit more of a structured running attack where they want to score, but they want to score in 5-minute drives as opposed to 1-minute drives. But then again, how asinine does that sound? Hey, you want to really slow down scoring? I mean, that just sounds crazy in theory.
But no, it's something that we're going to be talking about when you look at Sark and then what he's going to bring in, because he's going to have some pro-style principles. Sure, he's going to be spread and a combination of those. But when you need to be physical, I don't know if Alabama had that physicality that they've had in the past. Maybe that was something that, you just don't snap your fingers and automatically go to. You build it up, and you've got it in your sort of arsenal. But Alabama was not one of those teams that I had a lot of confidence. If it was 3rd and 1, I wasn't very confident that they could pick up a yard by running it down somebody's throat.
I think they could have had they been more, like you said, committed to it earlier in the year, and that's just been the mantra. But for them, it was more, it was 7-on-7 style football, and it was, guess what? It was Big 12 football, but that's also what they had unbelievable success, and that's why, we're talking about Alabama outside of 3 quarters of football. There's a lot of people that think they could have been one of the greatest football teams in the history of the sport, right? Not just Alabama football, but in the history of the sport. So, again, I think there's the knee-jerk reaction because it is Alabama and there's so much hatred. But the reason why there's hatred towards Alabama is because they're the kings for probably, the last, decade of what the gold standard is in football. It's just Clemson's found a way to win those 2 of the last 3 years, and that's why Nick Saban's always chasing perfection and why he makes changes. Well,
and we had a guy on from Georgia yesterday. It was kind of funny. He said, I don't know if Nick Saban's going to be there in 5 years. I said, well, I don't know if Kirby Smart's going to be there in 5 years. I mean, do any of these coaches have a 5-year guarantee? I mean, you look around the league, not in this current league that we're in. Does anybody have a 5-year guarantee?
Hell, I don't have a 5-day guarantee. I mean,
sure.
I'm ready to hop on a flight. I hope I have a 5-hour guarantee. But, I mean, I think Jimbo, obviously, with his 10-year deal, with Kirby. But, I think, there's no – I think for Nick, it's just more of the always chasing excellence, always chasing perfection. He wants the perfect recruiting class, the perfect play call, the perfect coaching staff. And every year, if he doesn't find it, he's still going to try to make changes about how he can get better. And hey, that may be maddening for some. I mean, listen, we're not talking about Alabama going 8-4 or 7-5, right?
We're talking about them. Peter, you would have no clue by the Alabama standard here. I mean, it's championship or bust. I mean, I'm telling you, we've had a 17-day funeral here in T-Town.
Well, and I dealt with this when I covered the Spurs. When the Spurs won their national titles, it's like, well, I don't care if we make it to the Western Conference Finals. Like Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, they need to win a title or else what's wrong? And again, I'm never going to fault the fan base for it. You have to also manage the expectations of, listen, do you know how many other teams would absolutely kill to have one season like Alabama has, much less the last decade? So, again, it's always going be this way, but as long as Nick Saban's at the helm, it will be. And honestly, I think a loss like that honestly sends a shot of adrenaline into Nick that keeps him wanting to chase it longer than retire sooner.
Peter, what's the topic that's going to grab our attention this offseason in college football? The show that you do, SiriusXM, ESPN, SEC Network, what's that driving conversation that we're going to have this offseason that may, the transfer portal we talked about last year? Well, now that's a big deal. I mean, maybe we didn't really expect that it was this large, but what is that offseason topic that you think may be the driving force this offseason?
I think immediate eligibility. The Tate Martell case, guys, is going to be intriguing because if Tate Martell can say, hey, coaches left, my coach had to leave, and now I want to play immediately, it'll be interesting to see how the NCAA handles that. So I think that's the biggest deal that we're going to have on the floor. Guys becoming immediately eligible when they ask for this waiver. And I think that's probably the biggest talking point we're going to have over the next 6 months.
And then the rebuttal of that is, do we increase the scholarship number from 85 and maybe push it up a little bit because you're losing players underclassmen? I was reading an article a couple of minutes ago from Ross Dellinger talking about inside the numbers. The kids are leaving at a rapid pace. You're losing guys, your transfers. At some point, you got to cover up the weakness. If a guy like Alabama has depth issues, then they're one of the best rosters in college football. Do we have to look at upping the scholarship total number?
I don't know so much about that because guess what? I don't think it ends up hurting Alabama. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, people are going to leave Alabama, but guess how many kids would kill to play in under, that all of a sudden they were unbelievable for a major. But again, all of these rules and regulations, don't think that Nick Saban and his crew and his staff aren't looking for the best way to take advantage and full advantage of the rules. And again, it's the other universities that are going to struggle with these rules, not Alabama.
SEC Network studio anchor there, part of SiriusXM, host SEC This Morning. Peter Burns, find him on the Twitter account, straight up at Peter Burns, ESPN on the Twitter. Thank you, Peter, for making time for us this afternoon.
Man, anytime I come on and listen to some old school rap coming in and talk football, it's a good day. So I appreciate the invite. You guys have a heck of an off season.